So we are now recording. We are in executive conversations, the first version of executive conversations. So this podcast has gone through many iterations. It has been the Flying Cat Marketing Podcast, and then it became the SEO Growth Podcast, and we've recorded over 100 episodes, and then I took a pause. And now I've rebranded to Executive Conversations, where I'm talking about the things that people don't talk about enough, which is really hard as a marketer. Because we can talk about ideas up the wahoo until the cows come home, but unless we can get buy-in from the rest of the stakeholders, ideas don't really mean anything unless it's something that you can actually do and you can tie to target. So as I've been speaking to a lot of marketers lately, this is a really big pain point, how we navigate these executive conversations. So that's what this new podcast is about. And for every episode, I am also planting a tree. So we have a nice little environmental impact there. And today I'm really excited to have Julien Sauvage, who runs content, brand, comms, and product marketing at Clari. He was former VP of product marketing at Gong, Talent, and Salesforce. And hey, hello. We're going to talk about executive conversations today. How's it going, Julien?
It's going well. Ça va bien. I love how you pronounce my name. Everybody should always pronounce my name that exact same way. Because I'm French, and I believe so are you, or half French. So
Yes. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited. It's 7 a.m. here in San Francisco, which is why I have a weird lighting, but I'm ready to go.
I'm honored and shocked that you would come on at 7 a.m. So thank you. Thank
Have
you
my
for
coffee.
doing that.
Yeah, of course.
That's important. Yeah, so let's dive into the topic. You've been VP at many companies already. You've made things happen with great success. So that means you've had to navigate these executive conversations. So before I jump into your role at Clari, what is your well, tell me about your background, and at one point you had to learn this skill of okay, I'm actually not just pitching a cool idea, but I'm selling to the board, or I'm selling to the CRO, or I'm selling to the CEO or the CFO. What was your journey building these skills?
Yeah, I love that question. I would say you shouldn't wait until you become like a team lead or a VP or a C-level exec before you kind of start, going a little deeper into the operational aspect of things. I think there's a little bit of almost like a diva thing that a lot of us marketers have, which is I'm too good. My story is too good for me to take a look at my data and my budget and my spreadsheet. And I believe that that's a recipe for failure. So there's always that left brain, right brain type of thing that I think every marketer at any level should have. And so what that means is that if you create a beautiful sales deck, for example, you have to go deep into the data to know who's using it and who's not.
Yeah.
If you're, creating a beautiful brand campaign, you go and measure the impact of that campaign. It can be with super scrappy ways, like a little survey, or something more fancy with word of mouth and marketing mix models and whatnot. But there's always kind of a more grungy, data-oriented, I hope you're okay, operational aspect that I think has to go with the job and with every program that every marketer is putting together. And so for me, it's been, I would say, a continuous journey. Sorry, I spoke a little high level, but it's been a journey from the moment I started my first, gig as PMM and all the way to becoming people manager. Then you have to get deep into how you hire, the process of hiring. Then you start having a budget. That's a new skill set. So never forget the grungy operational details that go with the job.
Yeah. I guess it becomes different once you get a budget, because now it's not only I have ideas and I don't have a budget to run, but now it's okay, how the way that I'm allocating this budget needs to tie to targets. And it also, I need to show how my cool idea is going to get it's kind of a three-way thing, right? You tie the
It
cool
is.
idea to the target, and then how does the budget reflect the embodiment, the manifestation of this idea?
100%. Yeah, no, for sure. It gets more complex. Don't get me wrong. It gets more complex, I think, as the scope expands, right?
Yeah.
But I think I just want to, bust that myth of I'm a young marketer. I'm too good for that thing. I'm just going to go and nail my beautiful campaign and story, because
Yeah.
you need to get your hands dirty and into the grungy operational details for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, what do you mean? Are you saying that marketers are too good for what?
I think too good for um, that's a good question. I think a little too good for going deep into the data, inspecting the process and the flow,
Okay.
nailing the handoff points, like between a demo request and a lead, and then something that an SDR would work on. Like there's a lot of possible sources of leak in your funnel, and so I think marketers tend to be a little more creative and obsessed with the story and the brand. And so am I. I'm exactly like that. I'm a big brand and story guy. But I think it's all at the expense of excuse me, being able to go a little deeper, inspecting your funnel, identifying those pockets of possible improvement, measuring, and all the, like we said, operational excellence
Yeah.
that has to come with the job. Owning planning, owning kickoffs, hiring, owning
Yeah.
budget, presenting to the C-suite, like all those things are not sexy. And as such, I think a marketer can be,
They don't want to do
not
that.
always intentionally, but can be a little, like shying away from those.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I've seen before some SEOs, for example, who have good ideas, like they do good SEO, but the presentation skills are lacking. And
Yeah,
then when they're trying to present it, and then we're like, it gets vetoed, or they're taking time to consider, or people are even arguing, like, well, I don't understand this and that. And they
yeah,
kind of get frustrated, like, well, why? Like, I know what I'm doing, just believe me. Is that kind of what you
exactly.
mean, where it's like, yeah, you should just trust me, this is going to work, why do I have to dig deeper?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that happens. It still happens every day, all the time, for sure. So I guess the one of the key things, and it goes without saying, is every investment you have to prove the return. It's just simple,
Yes.
right? So going deep into the data, measuring, and we all know how hard it can be for certain types of programs, right? Mostly upstream, but you gotta find a way to show if your thing is
Yeah,
working or not.
or if it's going to work as well.
Or if exactly,
Again.
or if it's going to work in advance before you even ship it and launch it. Yeah.
So if you didn't report to anyone, right, who do you report to now at Clari?
Report to the CEO,
To the
Andy, our
CEO.
our CEO. Yeah.
Okay. So if you didn't report to him, how would what you're doing, your GTM motion, how would it be different than
Oh,
what it
that's
is?
an interesting what if scenario type of question. I didn't
If you didn't
prepare for
have to
that
justify
one.
anything.
Yeah. We're being recorded, so I can only say so much. No, it's cool. I like that question a lot. I would say, um, I'm thinking. I think I think you're always reporting to somebody. I
Yeah,
think if like not reporting to anyone, what does that mean? That means you're the CEO,
that means you'd be
and then
reporting
you're
to
reporting
yourself.
to the board or to the shareholders, or maybe you're self-employed, and then you're reporting to yourself and your family, right? So there's always demand. There's always, the big brother is always watching you somehow. So you're always reporting to someone. I guess that's my first question. I mean, my first thought. But I think if I had, say, more freedom to do whatever, I would hire more people. And I bet you that if you ask 100 CMOs, they all gonna say the same thing. Like the whole do more with less just does not work. So you need more people. So I would hire more. Um, I think I would. So Clary is really big on category play and category design, right? Like play bigger, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
And I think it's working well. I would make sure it's working across every pocket of every department of the organization. If I really was completely in charge, I would have every rep and everybody, even back office people, like run that playbook. Um,
Sorry,
and
run
then the
which
third,
playbook?
yeah, I can't even show you. It's going off script and off screen. Hey, I'm back. I don't know if you've heard that thing. So
Oh,
play
okay.
bigger. Yeah. It's Christopher Lockhead and his people. So it's all about creating a bigger problem that you haven't heard of, and then you educate the market on that problem, which is kind of a new category, a
Yeah.
new market, and then people would naturally gravitate towards you as the solution because they associate your brand with the product.
Yeah.
That's kind of
This
like
is
a very imperfect way of describing what this
okay.
is in one sentence. So that takes, it's not just a marketing thing, it's like an entire company alignment type of dogma, if you will. And we all know that in practice sometimes people are reluctant to certain things, and there's change management and whatnot. So if I had complete freedom, I would, you know, make that a mandate for everybody, back office, front office, customer facing or not.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's where my mind went. More hiring, more category. Oh, and maybe just more. I would amp up like brand programs and things that we all know have a longer return on investment, right?
Yeah.
Word of mouth, social. Like we're doing pretty good on social and on overall thought leadership here at Clari, but I think we could do more. So I would do
Yeah.
more without having to justify the longer CAC and
Right.
return. Yeah.
So I'm going to challenge you. Is that okay?
Of course.
Why do
That's
you
why I'm
think
here
that
for.
you
I want to be challenged with my coffee challenge.
7 in the morning challenge?
There you go. I'm ready.
What do you think is stopping you from being able to do that
Yeah,
now?
it's a good question. Well, if we take, what were my 3 points again? More hiring, more category, and more brand. So we can, I think the reason is different for each, right? So more hiring, I'm just going to play the dumb card of there's no budget.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of what it is. There's still, I know budget, people can say, oh, budget is, you can you can use budget the way you want and you can show return and then you get more budget. I think that's bullshit. I think budget is kind of a set thing, typically that finance sets for the year, and then it's just your envelope and you have to work with it with programs and people dollars, right? So it's a little sad, but I think the main reason why I wouldn't hire more people is there's a big budget constraint that I just have to
Yeah.
work with. No, it's a lazy answer, but it is just the truth. The second one, why not more category? I think it's a little bit of what I touched on, which is a little bit of resistance to change and like a mindset that people haven't quite embraced as a whole. If you take a more junior sales rep, for example, they're really trained in a way at going as fast as possible to solutioning and demoing the product. Like that's just how they're wired, right? So because of that, they kind of skip a little bit. I'm generalizing, of course, but one of the pitfalls is that they would skip the discovery portion. They wouldn't go deep
Mhm.
into the problems that the buyer is experiencing. They wouldn't spend time educating them on big market trends, and they go straight to feature function and look at my product. It's beautiful. I have this and I have
Yeah.
that, and I can sell you so much. So that's the resistance, because that play is pretty much opposite of that. You wait until the last minute of your call before you even talk about yourselves, right? So it's not intuitive, and I think that's why it requires a little bit of that mind shift
Okay.
to happen. And
So
then the third one, sorry.
no, I was just going to ask, you mentioned SDRs a few times. Do they report to you? Are they under marketing?
No, SDRs were under marketing, but they're now in revenue under the CRO.
Okay, so the play bigger, it's a mindset shift thing, but do you think that within the marketing department you have that mindset?
I think so. Yeah, it took some time. It's taken repetition, education, some lunch and learn, brown
Yeah.
pack type sessions. I actually asked a lot of people to read the book.
Okay.
One of the authors came to as a speaker to the team, and I think we got there. I think people completely are on board, but it took months, not weeks.
Yeah.
And so then the question is again the long-term
Is it worth it
gain versus
or
the
how?
short-term pain type thing.
Before we get to your third point,
Yeah.
excuse me, my question is all this buy-in and mindset shifting, is this stuff that you had to do with people reporting to you, or did you also have to do it with your executives?
Yeah, both. It's a great question. I would say both. And of course, it's a little easier when it's your team, right? Not because of like any top-down dynamics BS type thing, but it's more like your team, then it's your people. It's the people you chose. It's people who chose you. It's a culture. So it's just easier, I think, to change the minds and the hearts within the team. But yeah, also a lot of I would say our CEO has always, he's the biggest advocate of that play. So I felt great about this, but it did require a little bit of, a little bit of like convincing with some other members of the C-suite,
Yeah.
let's say. So it's both lateral, up, down, like every direction for sure.
Do you think the way that you get buy-in from the other executives on a mindset shift, how is it different from how you would get it from your direct report?
Yeah, it's a good question. Hmm, I think it's in a way I'm thinking. I think it just takes more time and like more
More.
data, yeah, to like convince an exec than somebody on your team. Um, so it just like it takes various attempts because it's their seat could be in fire if you're not suggesting the right playbook, right? So there's more to lose for them than there is for
Yeah.
somebody deeper in the org. So they want to make sure they make the right decision. And so it just takes more convincing, more data, um, from third party even, and you would have them talk to those thought leaders and other CPOs. If we're talking about the chief product officer, it's not the case here, thankfully. But say if your chief product officer is not on board with your idea, then you would have him or them talk to another CPO, another company, and they do a little bit of like peer review type stuff, right? So it
Okay.
just takes a lot of like data points, I guess, to convince them and get their buy-in. But there's a but. I think once they're bought in and they're kind of like they're not going to go back to a different mindset because they see the potential and they don't want to change.
Mhm.
When the people on your team, it's faster for them to get bought in, but then they also want to like do short-term stuff, and as such they might be tempted sometimes to revert back to the old way. So
Yeah.
it's in a way it takes longer with an exec, but then you're good, and with non-execs it's faster, but there's a risk of reverting back to the old behavior.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah, because the stakes are higher for an exec, so they have to be
That's
like,
right.
"Okay, I'm 100% gonna do this," and the other ones are just like, "Okay, yeah, whatever you say," but maybe
Yeah,
they're not actually fully into it because it's not a risk
exactly.
for them.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the right thing. Yeah.
And then we had your third point, brand, why you're
Yeah.
not able to do these long-term plays.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of a combination of the same reasons as one and two, right? So one was lack of budget, two was different mindset and change management. I would say the my third one is combination of both. As we
Yeah.
all know, brand projects and programs can be expensive. Not always, but it depends on the channel. It could be expensive, could take a longer time to return. And it just takes a little bit of that shift. So I would say it's a good kind of combination of one and two in a way.
Love it.
I got to say, I don't know if we're going to talk about measurement or whatever. I still struggle a lot with. There's ways, and we are, I think, very good at certain ways of measuring brand and market level programs, but sometimes it's just not enough. Sometimes the CEO just wants to see the impact on pipe, and so it's difficult to communicate the value of those programs. So definitely
Yeah.
the lack of out of the box measurement tools is an issue when it comes to brand campaigns and awareness stuff.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because I mean, you run
Yeah,
brand, so you do those kind of campaigns all the time, and you still manage
yeah,
to demonstrate the impact of them, I'm assuming.
yeah.
So what do you do? Like, what's your framework for measuring this stuff that feels not so measurable or like that's really long term?
Yeah, I think there's ways, right? And there's no recipe for success in measuring those. It's a little bit of like ad hoc. I wish it was easier and it was just like, here's my influenced and sourced pipe, go. But it's not like that. It kind of depends on the campaign type, depends on the channel, that type of stuff. So what we do, I can just tell you the type of stuff we're doing, be a little more like
Hmm.
with examples. So if we, excuse me, if we say we launch some new messaging, for example, at the top of the funnel, right? So we would talk about certain things, about certain trends. We, in the spirit of this thing, we identified like our villain in our story. It's called revenue leak, right? Leak, Leak. What
Yeah.
is revenue leak? It's revenue you're losing and you're not capturing due to breakdowns in your revenue process. So it's a new concept. It's a new thing that people didn't, know about. And so, so we talk about this, and then the way we measure if this is resonating in the market is we have our own conversation intelligence platform. So we do a recording of all the sales calls, and then we can have a tracker that says revenue leak, and we see if the buyer, not us, if the buyer is actually starting to use our lingo over
Oh,
time, more over time. That's a
wow.
good proxy for word of mouth, right? If the buyer is starting to use the words that you introduced to the market, that means that these words are actually resonating and
Okay.
working. So
Did you
that's
do that
that's
all
one
from
way.
the beginning? From the beginning, that was the plan. You said we're gonna make a
Yeah.
lingo.
Pretty much, yeah. It comes with that playbook. So yeah, we we came up with a few. It's called languaging in category design, which is another fancy word for kind of messaging. So we came up with our own vernacular and our own kind of glossary, if you will. I think it was a little too much. So in retrospect, the mistake we made was bombard the market with too many new things and new terms and new concepts and new words. So we reduced the amount of words we're pushing to the market lately, which is good. It's been good. But yeah, from the beginning, we knew we would go and kind of like identify new pain points and talk about them in new ways. And as such, we would set our trackers in our sales calls to know
Hmm.
if not just our sellers are adopting our lingo and messaging, and they are, but also if the buyer over time is starting
Wow.
to get to that
Okay.
mindset. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Very
one way.
cool.
There's other ways. Yeah. There's multiple ways for sure. That's one way that I've found successful.
What other ways have you, so you measure if the lingo is being adopted by the buyer,
Right.
um, and this is a long-term brand play. This is a category play, seeing are
Correct.
we doing the right category moves? Are we playing bigger?
Yeah.
Um, and what else do you do then to try to show success of these long-term plays?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's then ways that are maybe a little more traditional and more like brand, because like this whole thing, this is not even brand, right? You don't really talk revenue leak. It's not Clari. It's revenue leak. It's vendor agnostic, right? So then on maybe more like vendor centric type of things, we would do word of mouth, kind of like survey with. It's interesting because well, you're going to spring with a Y. So we by winter, right? So we actually licensed Winter. We're proud and happy users of Winter. Winter being, for those who don't know, a messaging testing and focus group testing platform. Super cool. And so we're using that to do kind of like to track word of mouth and if people are, aware of Clari. And by people, I mean a set of buyers we've never heard of, we've never talked to, right? So that's another way you measure word of mouth and see the reach over time. And then there's other proxies. I think social is a really good channel for us. LinkedIn is a really great channel. One of the top drivers to our website in terms of traffic, and so growth of our audience, growth in our social content impressions, growth in engagement. All those are proxy. Again, I realize it's only for one channel, but we use those as a way to measure, I would say, our brand health in general.
Okay. Are these numbers that you have picked yourself or that you're held accountable for?
Yeah, I picked, yeah, I mean, my team and I would like spend time, define the metrics, and then define the targets, right? There's the metrics and the targets. So metrics would be social impression, and target is plus 10% in one quarter, making that up. And so I communicate that to my stakeholders and my CEO, and once they're on board, then we just go ahead and execute and measure. Yeah.
And so you are being responsible for a brand. So that's, I mean, you are responsible for the long-term plays, but do they ever come back, the executives, and they're like, I need to see more pipeline or I need to see more leads and holding you accountable for that?
100%. Yeah, I always say that I'm responsible for pipeline as much as, growth marketing teams would be. Pipeline is, every marketer should always touch pipeline in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, they would come to me and be like, what's the impact of this and that? And so that's where we don't have a perfect answer, to be honest. And I don't think anybody really does. So we do a little bit of like manual analysis, like if you have a big press release, a big splashy launch on say Monday, then you give yourself like 1-2 weeks to see spike in web traffic, spike in demo form fills, and ultimately MQL. But it's very manual, right? It's not, and it's not causation, it's correlation. So in transparency, I don't think we've cracked that code, but I'm shopping around for a marketing mix model application. So talking to a few vendors, and they kind of do some of that stuff. We also have attribution models in-house, built in-house, but same, they only have so many data points. So a lot of the social stuff wouldn't be in that model. It's more just CRM data. So yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. I think the way we're doing it, the attribution and the influence is very manual right now.
Right.
But I'm hoping we can find a way to streamline that with an MMM, that's the word, app.
Marketing mix model? What is that? I've actually not heard of that. Is that like dream data or something?
It's a fancy word. It's actually not as complex as you would believe it is. So what it does is, and I'm a math guy, so maybe it's easier to just conceptualize. But if you're not, don't worry, don't run away. It's basically trying to build a model to correlate, say, sourced pipeline, or even maybe closed won revenue, like one of the revenue metrics, correlate that with everything that you would put in the model. So, and that has to be time stamped. So for example, is my social content impressions, is that influencing or correlating with pipeline? Media, am I being mentioned in the media over time? what's the topic share, what's the competitive share of voice, what's the number of followers on Instagram. I'm making that up. So you put all these metrics that vary over time, you put them in a box, and then the model is gonna correlate all of that stuff with how much revenue you've generated at a given point. That's what an MMM does. So it's a regression, mathematical, statistical analysis that would have an outcome, which would be if you're increasing your media coverage, making that up, by 10%, the impact on pipe is expected to be 0.1%, something like that. It's going to help you do a bit of a what-if analysis at the end.
Right. So it's a regression model. It's not the software, or you're looking for the software that does the model.
It's a software. Yeah, I'm looking for a software that would kind of do this whole thing and automate this.
Okay.
Because I know we're going deep, but doing one regression model is easy. Like I could even go back to Excel and do that myself. What's hard is the time lag component. Sometimes you do something one day and the actual impact of that thing is only like a week or a month after. So marketing mix models typically have a way to account for the time lag component and put that into the model.
So for everybody who thought that to be a marketer you had to be creative and artsy, in fact you have to be a mathematician.
Yeah. Sorry if I started to like get a little nerdy and geek out on that stuff. And again, if there's marketing mix model experts, like please come to us, to Maeva and me, because I'm educating myself on this. So my knowledge is not great, but I think there's something there that is powerful.
Yeah, it definitely sounds interesting. All right, this sounds like a good spot to wrap this up.
Yeah.
I have loved this conversation.
Me too.
It is what we need to talk about these days. So where can people connect with you if they want to talk to you more?
Of course, I would say LinkedIn would be the best way. Just go find my profile on LinkedIn, Julien Sauvage, or maybe we can put the link to your podcast episode. That's it.
We will put
Pretty easy
in the show notes. For those who were listening, thank you for listening all the way through. Please do give this a like, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much, and thanks, Julien.
Thanks, Maeva. Cheers, everybody.